to play this along those lines.
And 60,000 people are expected to have been invited to this stadium. As you can see from your screen, people continue to stream in into the Kasarani stadium ahead of that announcement. But obviously you would expect a spillover. That means then probably there will be more than 60,000 people inside that stadium and outside the stadium. And you can see there are also people there who are doing businesses. That is inside the stadium now. And as you can see, jubilant supporters of the ODM leader already in the stadium. We expect that before 1 p.m. The speeches will have begun, and probably the former Prime Minister will have spoken. But just in a bit, let's focus on Raila Odinga, the man, Professor Wajakoya. Looking at, Raila Odinga from birth in the year 1945 to who he is today in the year 2021, what does it speak about the person of Raila Amolo Odinga?
I will speak on my personal experience with Raila. When we used to give him security in London when I was in exile. And I would also like to go a footnote higher and also comment about his father, who is the creator of the mindsets like me personally, who believe in Odinga himself because of what he was as a man, what he stood for, and a man who could not take any kind of inconsistencies, a man who could not even face corruption. He even opted to resign to stand as a man, and that's what men are. Not unlike what we have in this system today, where somebody has flouted the system and instead of just resigning and going out like Murumbi, they are there, they say, I'm not going to resign. Now, Raila as a person, my experience with Raila as a person goes back into many years when I was in the police service, both in uniform and in intelligence. I know this person very well. He may not know that I know him. That's number one. Number two, I also have practically stayed closer to him in London when we were now both on the other side of the coin. And he is a man who is very down to earth. Like his father, Raila is a traditionalist. He has the Luo culture in him, whereby this era of modernization, of logic of modernization, of behaving like white person, what have you, Raila is not there. But however, he's surrounded by people who have let him down. He's surrounded by people who are actually milking him, people who are like ticks, who may not give room to others too. That's what informs you as to why some of us had to form political parties. We tried to join the ODM, but those around Raila pushed us aside. Raila cannot see that deficit. He's carrying a baggage around him that will drive voters away.
And we'll talk about that in a bit. And I think the picture is on the screen. He's the Kotu Secretary General Francis Atwoli making his way into the Kasarani Stadium, a key proponent of Raila Odinga presidency and the BBI that the president said the other day. What didn't happen will happen, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But that is Francis Atwoli. But the person of Raila Odinga, Wakili Ken Amondi, looking into his political life particularly, what does it say?
I think the person of Raila Odinga, as Prof has correctly put it, you see an individual that from the word go has stood out and has been consistent in amongst others standing for reforms. He is the embodiment of change in Kenya. I think it goes without question that this was one of the key proponents of the multi-party system of government. Of course, after that, he was also a key proponent in terms of the fight for constitutional change, which ultimately accrued when we had the 2010 constitution, which brought quite a number of radical changes, principle of which is devolution and of course the anchoring of the human rights within our constitution as it stands, and which is acclaimed worldwide as one of the most progressive constitutions in the world. So that if you look at Raila Odinga along that line, then you see an individual that has stood for and that represents where the country ought to be, as it were. And I'm saying this in the context of where we are right now as a country, where we really need to appreciate, because that is a fact, that we are in a system where a time when systems ordinarily don't work. We are in a time or a generation where, even including those that you may call lieutenants of the former Prime Minister, and to that extent I would agree with Professor, even where they run governments or they have opportunity in government, they would really not manifest that which Raila Odinga has stood for generation and generation. So that then I would say without any shadow of doubt that Raila Odinga, as it were, represents what, or rather how the country should be. He represents the values that we ought to stand for, the values that I can say represent or were moved, that motivated the founding fathers of the nation. I think that's where I can place Raila Odinga. As to if those have actually been achieved in the ground, other than from the aspect of the constitutional change, then the question that Prof talks of comes in the sense that for example, Raila Odinga does not run county governments because he is the governor. Raila Odinga may not necessarily be in particular governmental organs, so that these principles can be anchored and realized within our system. So that would be the that's the point of departure.
All right.
Yes.
Prof, when I was talking about the Kotu boss, Francis Atwoli, and his support for BBI, you were shaking your head. I don't know whether you disagree with Atwoli or the BBI.
Well, Atwoli is Atwoli, and he's one of the people who have come to self-impose himself on the Luhya community. He's a very, very greedy person in terms of him being very self-centered. He either goes his way or he does not go his way. He believes that is a small God who is self-claimed in the Luhya community. He doesn't even want to find out whether we have other Luhyas like myself who could be very useful in this country. He goes for people who will sing his music, and if you don't sing his music, it's fine. Now, for example, a lot of people are going to run away from Raila, especially because of the remarks this man makes. When he goes to Kakamega, as he's going, thinking that he's the spokesperson of Western Province, going to bus in thousands of people without telling us where he has got the funds from, that itself is a reflective of bad leadership. It's a reflective of imposition of leadership on the people. Raila does not need Atwoli. I don't know whether, my friend, you agree. Raila has built himself to be what he is. Those who have taken advantage of him and want to follow him so that they can actually come up to tell the world that I am the one who made Raila, they are just mistaken. I do not say that I have personal differences with Atwoli, but Atwoli is not inclusive. And that's why some of us are waiting for him to do his Kakamega concert. I call it a concert. And then when I launch my Roots Party, I'll go and launch and then tell the people of Western on what how I disagree with some of these politics that are rotten politics. Raila is a man who has done what he has done, and that's why the world stands for him wherever he goes. And even our own president had to recognize that the country was going in the drains. The president recognized that very quickly, and he called Raila and he said, you know what, let us put this country to the right path. And that's what has been, that's the peace that we have been enjoying from the time when they had a handshake. Otherwise, the looting and the stealing in this country was just going too far, and we thank God that Raila came in to stop that corruption.
There's something you said, quite interesting. The Prime Minister has a very good record, but surrounded by people who betray him. If you can elucidate a bit on what you mean by people who betray him.
There are those people who will elbow you before you reach Raila. Raila has got massive following, but some of those people who follow Raila do not know Raila apart from seeing him on TV. Those people who have surrounded him have kept Raila away from going to shake hands with these people in the streets, going to eat with them in their houses, going to schools to visit kids, going to hospitals to visit patients, going to where workers are and putting on a helmet and working just like what Samora Machel used to do, working just like what Magufuli was doing. Raila is shielded as a king. And then there is this cult of some people now going to kneel before him. And he accepts that. That's why he goes wrong. Recently, in a by-election in Kibera, we saw a grown-up man, a married man, a full grown-up person who had capacity to be himself going to kneel in front of Raila.
Hey.
Those kneeling kind of politics is what drives people like us away from him. Because unless you kneel, like me recently, I was told to take a bahasha to Baba. And then I was also told that Baba's bahasha is different from the one you'll take to Mama.
Who told you that?
Well, I'm privileged not to disclose that information. Then I'm like, but I've stayed with Raila in London, he knows me. Why are you telling me to go? Because they also want me to go and kneel. I will not kneel.
But it is not Raila Odinga who asked you.
No, it's not. Those are people who are lying. Raila may not even know. These are brokers down there who are using Raila's name,
right.
and that's what drives away people.
Wakili Monde, there's that allegation made, and Professor Ajaka is not the only person who is making it, about people who become watchmen or gatekeepers when it comes to accessing the ODM leader, Raila Odinga.
I think that is one of the challenges that leaders of some stature, for example, the Prime Minister, may just, have to experience. I mean, even my good friend that I've just met here, or Prof, I mean, if one day, one time, he rises to that level, chances are, and you have the whole country, an issue of the country affecting you, and you have to deal with, so that then you have to delegate a lot of things to so many other people. And some of these characters who, for all intents and purposes, may not have been part and parcel of your struggle, may then be the ones who come up with this sort of shady things that he's talking about. And of course, such have also been said in respect of the former Prime Minister, though personally I haven't experienced any such. I mean, my interactions even at the home have always been such that you go to the elder statesman, you hear the advice from him. The much that has come out is that instead, rather than the bahasha people keep talking of, instead you take the breakfast and whatever and the advice. I mean, that is my experience with Raila Odinga. I tend to think that along those lines, I would comment in terms of the fellas who purport and are actually known to be core diehards and who stood with Raila for long, and who also happen to now have opportunity to lead, particularly by virtue of the reforms that Raila fought for and brought, so that now, remember, we have devolution, such that we have governments which are controlled even by ODM, and these are basically Raila's lieutenants. So that one would ordinarily expect that these would be the persons that would perpetuate the Raila philosophy. One would expect that these counties would manifest what Raila stands for, so that when Raila now declares his candidature, I mean, selling him ought to be easy. He should simply be saying that, look, if you go to county this, being given 10 billion per year, this is what they've done in terms of our manifesto. This is what county this has done. Look at how they have transformed, such that, can you imagine having me handling the 6-7 trillion Kenyan budget? This is what I would do. I think to that extent, these characters may have let down the professor, especially in situation where corruption would be the order of the day in those counties, in a scenario where, failure to just comply with the basic rule of law in terms of how to do things right, which is what the former Prime Minister has all along stood for throughout his life. So that I would say that it is to that extent that these characters have actually interfered with what the former Prime Minister actually stands for, to the extent that we now have a scenario where the Deputy President can be said to have massive hold, in the country. One would have to ask him or herself, why is that so? I mean, it is basically because what the other team stands for is what you would find most of the Raila lieutenants in the counties, doing more or less the same, so that the person down there in the ground would not see so much of. different. So I think that is the major challenge that Raila really has.
Right.
He stands for something. We all know what he stands for. But then most probably the guys that he has entrusted and who have a responsibility do not so much really manifest this based on the positions that they have.
Professor Jakoya, in the political life of the former Prime Minister, would you say you've picked an element of inconsistency? For example, the KANU NDP merger that led to the former Prime Minister coming into government. There are also those people out there who think even the handshake itself, although the president has really mentioned the importance of the handshake, there are those who feel it was a part of inconsistency on his part.
Well, I would say yes, and I would also say no.
Okay.
I would say yes because the Prime Minister wanted really to be in the government because he was feeling being left out. And that's why now he's one of the government projects. Right now, Raila is riding on the government, vehicles, police, and everything. Even Uhuru Park and what have you, yes, Raila is part of the government project, and the handshake led to that. That is a fact. Whoever wants to hang me can hang me when I leave the studio. But on the other side, yes, that handshake actually came with a meaning. People were crying.
Yeah.
People did not know where to go. The monies were being looted. The Aror Kimorel, I don't know if I pronounce Kimorel Dam, the looting of the maize scandals in Rift Valley, the bloating of the cabinet by people from two ethnic communities. I mean, the whole world was just going into disarray. The appointment in government was solely pegged on which tribe you came from, which community you came from, and how loyal you were. And that's why there was government mismanagement. So Raila's coming in and shaking Uhuru's hand was actually a litmus test that stopped that ego. And from that time up to now, we have not had big corruption scandals. He also stopped this preeminence of people going to use government projects as their own personal projects. People opening roads that were not there. People going to Canaan when they were in Jerusalem. So all that actually came up with a mixed feeling. And at least there was sanity and peace. And there have been peace since that particular time. The business has opened up. People have been booming. If you go to Ngara right now, or from that particular time, you see a cross-section of people walking up and down. And when people are walking, that means they are busy. That means they are doing something to enhance their livelihood. But previously, the country was coming to a standstill. The thief was just stealing, whoever it was, God knows, and Kenyans know. School kids were being thrown out, their playgrounds being stolen, the river Nairobi and what have you. Land was just being grabbed everywhere. You go to Kiambu County, it was just in a mess. Somebody stealing, literally. You go to some of the counties in some parts that I'm not going to mention, but I will mention if you allow me. Things were just like, but Raila's coming up actually quietened the situation, and the world came up, and the stock markets rised. The international community brought in aid, though people may not know, pegged on what the president had done to sanitize peace by bringing in the opposition. And that was the foundation of the problems we have today, because some people wanted just to be president. I have to be president no matter what. If Raila and Uhuru can shake hands, why are they shaking hands? It's me who was supposed to. Come on. The country was going down in the gallows. Thank you.
All right. Wakili Amonde, comment a bit on that aspect of the allegation of inconsistency.
I think in respect of 2018, looking at it from let me start from an academic perspective. You can say that in the sense that ordinarily one would expect an opposition leader to just stick to the opposition. That is from an academic perspective of doing things. But I mean, we are living in a practical world. What we face and the situation in the country in post-2017 election was practical, and we know what it was. We know what happened. Things were not moving. I mean, there was no business that was going on, so that it would therefore seem, and I can confidently say that the handshake between the president and the former prime minister was justified. Of course, we also the consequences of the same. Prof has just spoken of how the culture of looting just came to an end. I mean, we lived in a country which was being raped and looted, right, left, and center.
But KEMSA scandal has happened.
Of course, there's an aspect of KEMSA in between. But Prof used a word that if you look at the extent of corruption post handshake, I mean, it's so much reduced. Yeah. So if you also look at the level of government project implementation, so that we don't have this story of launching of fake projects. Things are actually moving throughout the country. Look at the expressway. Yeah. Look at, for example, if you go to the other part of the world, Western Kenya, the ports, and look at the Lamu port thing. I mean, there's so much that has happened in between. Of course, there's also the question of national unity. The fact that previously there's a sense in which a significant number of Kenyans felt locked out of the national government, and you can't live in that sort of a society where 40 tribes feel probably only 2 are in a government. So that after the handshake, there's a sense in which there was an element, a feeling of inclusivity, which is really key even towards economic development, because once a significant mass of the country feel detached, then we cannot have economic development and prosperity. So that I would say that it would seem that even when Raila has gone against the norms in terms of cooperating with the government system, when he is actually the opposition leader, if you look at it from the perspective of the end justifying the means, then it would seem that he was justified. I think he will be vindicated by history to that extent.
All right.
Yeah.
And you can see live pictures from Kasarani, the exuberance and the excitement by the supporters of ODM leader Raila Odinga carrying banners there. That's that's right in the center of that stadium. And clearly this looks like Professor Wajakoya, the supporters of ODM leader Raila Odinga appear to believe that this is the most realistic shot ever the former Prime Minister has ever had in his running for presidency.
I don't say supporters of Raila that this is the first time they are thinking like this. Raila's diehard supporters are diehard supporters right from the time when they started supporting Raila. So even if they are going in that one, that crowd you see is a crowd that has gone in with their heart, not burst in. Those who have been burst in probably are those delegates who have come from elsewhere. But if you go in the streets of Nairobi and you go even to the estates, you'll find that there are some people who are born to support Raila, even if they have not met him in person. And that's what democracy is, not autocracy. Most of Raila's rallies, people sleep praying to wake up to go voluntarily without being burst in. But if you look at the opposite, which I'm not going to mention, of course it's obvious, people get burst in. And before I answer your question, recently when I was campaigning in Mumias, I did what I did and I came out, and somebody also went there, and you'll find buses coming from as far as Vihiga, Kapsakwany, Nandi, bringing in people to Mumias to accelerate the crowd. Raila doesn't need that. In fact, if Raila was to go to Mumias and I was go to Mumias, well, we shall meet because that's my home ground to test my popularity. But I will not want to say anything because the Prime Minister has got people who believe in him. I did believe in him, but I'm now running with him to tell him that, look, this thing is not born for you forever. These are the mistakes you have made. If you accept, let us correct them, but you correct them politically.
Professor Wajakoya is running for president?
Yes, I'm running.
All right. We have a presidential candidate on set. Also, quite an interesting one. But Ken,
yes,
analyzing this fifth stab of the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, there are those who believe this is the most realistic shot the former Premier has had in his entire career of running for presidency.
Yeah, I think you have to look at Raila Odinga, particularly his contest of the presidency from 2007. Yeah, I think was he first contested in 1997. But it is from 2007 when he made what can be described as serious stabs at the presidency. And you realize that, for example, in 2007, there's still that contention. You ask the Raila supporters will tell you he won that one clear. Mm-hmm. Of course, it ended in contention and a stalemate, and that's how he became the prime minister. Mm-hmm. Come to 2013, and of course, there was also the question of the legitimacy in terms of the elections. There's a sense in which it was felt that there's a way in which it's called what? The electronic fashion of transmission of votes, which was tested for the first time in 2013, was manipulated to deny him victory. That's a sense that is held by so many of Raila's supporters. Of course, come to 2017, still under the same banner of the electronic mode of transmission of votes, you are aware that the Supreme Court nullified the presidential election results, and it was confirmed officially that the same did not meet the threshold espoused by the law. So that given that history, you therefore find a person whose supporters have all along held the view that there's a sense in which this gentleman has been winning, and in one way or another he was denied victory. And of course, the blame was all along placed at the feet of some entity which has come to be described as by Kenyans as the deep state. Now, given the handshake between the former prime minister and the president, who seems to, is now convinced that the best person that would move the country forward in terms of the legacy and the sound foundation that was laid by President Mwai Kibaki, then ultimately, grounded by President Uhuru Kenyatta, save for the cases of corruption, that President Uhuru Kenyatta and his team feel that this is the person that would then drive the nation ahead. I think that then gives a lot of boost to this gentleman who has demonstrated over the years that, look, he has had that solid support from the ground. So that if, in addition to that, the fellas that hold the levers of state power would also see sense in his vision, then I tend to think that therefore forms the basis of the thought that this would be, the most realistic and best shot at the presidency insofar as Raila Odinga is concerned.
All right, and as you can see the pictures live from Thika Road, just somewhere near the Kasarani Stadium, and clearly Kenyans are going to be inconvenienced a bit though, because you can see some snarl up on Thika Road, but then again there's the price to pay for this announcement. The other lanes appear to be moving, but the ones moving towards Kasarani appears that's where there's a bit of a snarl up, and you can see also how things are inside the stadium and now the roads. That's the situation on Thika Road. So if you're going to use Thika Road today and headed to Kasarani for the Azimio la Umoja convention, obviously you will be inconvenienced a bit, but that's just for a few hours. And after the former prime minister has made that announcement, the roads were clear, and there's a graduation, I think so, for Mount Kenya University. So Thika Road is going to be a mess today. If you can avoid it, just avoid it. Professor Wajakoya, let's talk about government's involvement in the Azimio la Umoja and things as they are today, as you see them in Kasarani. You can't fail to see the presence of government in terms of supporting the former premier in his announcement today.
That's why the president has gone wrong. And the president will remain in history. President Uhuru Kenyatta will remain in history as the first president in this world to support a candidate, use government machinery, use government security, and so forth and so forth. We are yet to announce our presidential candidates, though some of us are looking at it, and more presidential candidates will come the way. The president would have done us justice if he treated all of us in the same way. And now, if Ruto was being supported by Uhuru, for example, what would Raila supporters be saying? That is also something that people have to tread very carefully. Let us not celebrate what we don't know yet. Because some of us have not started. And even if it's the masses in Uhuru Park, let them be there. If I go to to Kasarani tomorrow, definitely I will also have my own mass. You have seen history repeating itself in Uhuru Park. Kalonzo goes in today, the whole place is full. The same people just change uniform and what have you. So that's not really a big deal to me. But what I want to say is that the government itself has given itself a stab by giving preferential treatment to one candidate over the rest of the candidate. And on this one, it might have its own ramification, and Raila might lose elections on that.
Quite interesting. And we'll talk about that government support in terms of the outcome of the election. But Wakili Amondi, government's involvement, obviously the presence, even in the Mount Kenya Foundation meeting, I think we saw a number of cabinet secretaries and PSs in that meeting. And you can't help but see government aiding this meeting today, albeit silently.
I can say that, and I think I mentioned it a little bit in the last time when you asked me a question, that the country, if you look at it keenly after 2017, and Prof captured the mood well when he talked of the looting spree, where the country was just going haywire. It means we are at a momentous moment as a country. And I want to believe that for the president, it's therefore more about protection of legacy. I mean, if I was in President Uhuru Kenyatta's shoes, I think I would somehow think along the same lines. And it's not strange. We all remember when President Barack Obama's term was ending. And I mean, he took there's that distinction of him as being the American president that went all out to campaign for Hillary. You know, that was anti-American presidential system way of doing things. And why was President Obama doing that? I mean, given the rhetoric that he saw in Donald Trump, he knew if we have this guy there, we will lose direction as a country. Of course, majority of Americans thought otherwise. They voted for Donald Trump. But what happened? We saw the result.
Isn't that what Professor is alluding then, that the support of the incumbent could actually be costly to the candidate running? You have a perfect example in Clinton and President Obama.
Not necessarily. It could, but it could also not. And particularly when you're dealing with the candidate Raila Odinga, you are talking of someone who already has that base. You are talking of someone who, you know, like in 2017, as was manifested in the election, more or less controlled like half of the country. So that Raila would not ordinarily qualify as someone's project. But if you look at it in terms of the big picture, given the crossroads in which we're finding ourselves as a nation, given the fact that we have there's a legacy that has to be protected, and there's a sense in which some mindset must just be, you know, removed from the country. You know, there's a culture that there's a risk of the country being led in the hands of persons that would make, you know, looting be the order of the day, shortcuts be the order of the day. I mean, it's all about our future as a nation. It's about the heart of the nation. I recall the other day Cabinet Minister Omunya saying it, and one of the reasons why I like him, my former lecturer Omunya, is that, you know, he speaks from his heart and he brings it out clearly. The fact that, you know, the country cannot be run on certain pedestrian economic, you know, theories and clarion calls. Then you take advantage of, you know, the fact that the economy is bad, and then, I mean, our economic situation is complex, so that we need a sound way of handling some of these things. So that, looking at it from that perspective, I think the president, given the fact that he is keen about his legacy and where he is reached, and knowing the deputy president more than any other person, because I think if there's one person who has got the data about us, it is him who is in the office of the president. There must be good reason why he deliberately ensured that in one way or another, the system of governance, in as much as it ought to be neutral, is directed towards a particular line. And I want to believe that he would have done it to any other candidate, even my good friend Prof, had it been that from their estimation of intelligence in terms of strength of candidature of the individual candidates, if the information was such that probably Prof has got so much weight, then I think the president would have done the same towards his direction, just to ensure that the country does not run into the drains. Because remember, we are dealing with a scenario where the country has been looted. We have individuals that have a lot of money, and because of the economic scenario in the ground, it is so easy to mislead these characters, and you find a not deserving individual taking over the presidency.
Prof, you hold the thought that the support of government for the candidature of the former premier could actually be costly for his ambitions.
It could be, and let me put it this way. The former premier is now officially the de facto leader, because he represents Uhuru in almost everything. Nothing wrong with that. But at the same time also, if you look at Ruto is also using government machinery and abusing it. And if you compare the two, in my opinion, of course, I cannot compare Raila to Ruto. Raila has not stolen that much openly, like what
he has stolen, but not that much.
Yes, of course, definitely. Corruption is both sides. There's nothing I can. Yes, but what I want to say now is, the government, where the government supports an incubate, statistics and scientific research has shown that the incubate will always fail unless rigged.
Okay.
We shall start with what happened with Moi when he put Uhuru as a project. That project failed. When now the issue of Uhuru Kenyatta came up, the TNA and URP coming together, or let me say when Kibaki now brought in the issue of Uhuru as a project, definitely Raila won with the landslide, and the election was rigged, and the courts were so much ashamed that they said this is whatever. But let's not go into that need. How do you expect other presidential candidates like myself and those yet to announce to compete in this kind of field where other presidential candidates are given everything they want?
The ground is uneven.
Is uneven.
All right.
That is also rigging, and that is what the president is doing wrong. Actually, he should be charged in a court of law for violating the Elections Act.
Right.
And also, Raila and Ruto should also be charged because they are violating the elections. The presidential elections has not yet been announced, and they started campaigning very early, taking advantage of the government supporting them, one directly and one indirectly. That is not what actually. And Raila did not need the government to support him for this. Raila himself would win the election without even the government support. Well, if they are supporting him to actually actualize what they did to him in 2007, it's okay. What do you think? But however, what I'm trying to say here is that it is Raila's day, and it's a competition. And this caping of the Electoral Commission coming up and saying and regulating the conduct of fundraising, while they know that the government is not actually telling the Electoral Commission how much money it is spending on the candidates directly or indirectly, that in itself is also unjust. Therefore, what I'm trying to say here is that there are 40% of undecided voters, 40% of undecided voters who will not vote for the status quo. And trust me, don't just look at me, I'm not here to grant it myself, but I might get a lot of
You actually
votes.
could be the beneficiary of the 40% undecided voters.
Yes.
And we're live on YouTube as well as on Facebook. Our platforms, online platforms are live. You can watch from there as well as on your set. And thank you very much for the comments coming in. And we'll be sampling some of them, so keep them coming, particularly on our YouTube live stream. Wakili Amondi, the elder brother to Raila Odinga, Dr. Oburu Oginga, said something very interesting. That this time round, we are going to win this election because we have system on our side. we have deep state on our side, and you alluded to that. I asked the former Prime Minister that question directly, I think about a month ago, and his response to me was he is not a government project, and Dr. Oburu was jesting in his usual manner. How does Raila Odinga, or how will he be able to delink himself from the tag of a government project?
I think the statement by Dr. Oburu, like the Prime Minister said, was more or less, I think it was more or less made in jest, given the history. In fact, for those who know Dr. Oburu in person, I mean, he's an old man who is a storyteller. I mean, who you really enjoy being around, such that when he says some of those things, in as much as at times others may take them seriously, but if you know him in person, then you'll understand what I'm talking about. However, for Raila Odinga, I do not think Raila really needs, what is called a system for him to win elections. Raila has the history. There's what he stands for. There's what he personifies. And in fact, if you look at where we are today as a country, and I think I had alluded to it earlier, the fact that we have reached a scenario, or rather as a country, we are in a state where not just to the political class and certain individuals that have been associated with corruption, but a significant mass of Kenyans have taken this to be the normal order of the day. You understand? So that for this to be reversed, then we really need someone who has stood consistently and even has suffered, sacrificed and actually suffered for these particular ideals, so as to bring the country back to order. Good, I mean, the fact is, throughout the country, this is something for which Raila Odinga has been appreciated for. So that if Kenyans really want change, if Kenyans are saying that we are tired of, the corruption that we have seen, if Kenyans are saying that we need consistency, even in terms of, actualizing the reform processes that we have had over all the years, if Kenyans are saying that we want real change in terms of economic development and want the person who has manifested this when he was in government, you realize that Raila Odinga comes out as the perfect answer in so far as this is concerned. So that I really do not think that Raila fits the tag of a project. Raila Odinga I don't think can be a project. It's only that it would be an added advantage for Raila Odinga to have the support of a sitting president. And suffice to add, I want to believe there is nobody, there is no candidate who does not wish to have the support of the sitting president. The deputy president hoped for that. All the other candidates, in fact, let me tell you, if today President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, or rather his system, can point at our Professor colleague here as the person that they feel will best I mean, he would not be the person that we're talking of today. From tomorrow, we'll all be discussing him and asking ourselves, So there's a sense in which it boosts, the campaign, not necessarily in terms of giving you the vote, but it boosts in fact, I differ with the people at times, when you give the example of Uhuru Kenyatta in 2002, that he lost because he was a project of the late President Moi. My position has all along been that were it not for the Kibaki Tosha clarion call, Uhuru Kenyatta would have been the president of Kenya at, was it 40 or 41 years old? Yes, he would have made it. Yeah, so let us not always take, how this notion that the mere fact that you have got the support of a sitting president, then that would mean that your presidential bid will flop. It depends on so many other factors.
All right.
Yeah.
And clearly you can see from the pictures you were seeing earlier, the likes of Millie Odhiambo Gesta leading Other ladies there in dance and song as the stadium continues to fill ahead of that announcement. And in a bit, we'll also be linking up with Brian Kimani to give us a little bit of the history and the profile of the former Premier Raila Odinga. But Professor Ajakoya, it is easy to say Dr. Oburu was speaking in jest when he said the state is on our side, so we will win this election.
Actually, Mr. Mondi, Council, Dr. Oburu was not speaking in vain. He was speaking what he knew was right, and that's what we are seeing. The fact that he's a joker, I mean, that kind of joke is a very reckless joke, if at all it's a joke. He meant it, and he was bragging about it, and these are the people who are putting Raila down. If I was Raila, I would have told my brother, come on, get to the back and sit there. I could have told Junet Mohammed, get to the back and sit there. I could have told John Sorengo, you guys go back and sit where you were supposed to. And that's how Uhuru Kenyatta was able to manage KANU by coming out of KANU and going into TNA and leaving those old skins in KANU so that he could actually revamp himself as the new Uhuru, who associated himself with the young and the youth, and that went well. But Raila's problem is, and I will tell him when I meet him, because I don't fear nobody apart from God, is he's surrounded by scrounges, people who have let him down, and that's why people like us are running for election to correct that kind of face. And Oburu Odinga is one of the people who might cost Raila Odinga elections.
You know, Wakili Amondi, I think also speaking in jest, appeared to suggest that if you were endorsed yourself by President Uhuru Kenyatta, your profile would
but your credibility will be dented and your integrity will be dented, and that's why I need to do what I have to do, to go and speak to the people directly like I'm speaking to you, and that's what I'm doing.
Okay, speaking directly to the people. Let's talk a little bit about, you know, the One Kenya Alliance, Wakili Amondi. I think we have seen Musalia Mudavadi will be an no-show at the Kasarani Stadium. So will Moses Wetangula. So is Kalonzo Musyoka. Probably the only person who has not spoken in the One Kenya Alliance, whether he will be in or not, is the senator for Baringo, Gideon Moi. Is it significant? Is it significant, the no-show by the One Kenya Alliance, who so many people tout as probably the magic that would hand Raila Odinga this presidency?
Of course, it's a cause for concern. I mean, it's not for nothing, for example, that of course we were learning that from the media, and I want to believe that media stations cannot be reckless, but the president felt that it is important that the NASA team, as they were, speak with one voice and, you know, come together. I think it would be the interest of so many of us, and even myself, that there's a way in which Kalonzo Musyoka, Musalia Mudavadi would, you know, coalesce around Raila Odinga as they did in 2017. And, you know, that is more so because of the surety in terms of the numbers that the team would galvanize. Remember that going to 2022, the person that they are contesting against is a grassroots man. You are talking about someone who is also relatively young and has energy and also has the resources which he is ready to spend. In fact, you can rest assured that after the Azimio la Umoja team, that is the function of today, probably tomorrow, 2 days thereafter, he'll have massive rallies around Githurai, you know, around that area, just so as to restore the support that. So that is a person that you are dealing with. So you can never take chances when you're dealing with that sort of a person. You can never act on assumptions when dealing with that sort of a person. You cannot just proceed on the basis that, you know, we have the, I don't know, the deep state and whatever. Every vote counts. Yeah, you cannot just assume that, like I said, that, you know, remember I started by saying that Raila Odinga cannot be a project because he's always had the numbers. In the last election, he had around half of the country. But that half of the country was because of the support of the likes of Kalonzo Musyoka, the likes of Mudavadi. Yeah, so that I think that is something that the ODM leader and his team will then really need to work on. I think what is fundamentally important is that if you look at it in terms of ideology, in as much as there may have been reasons that occasioned the split as it is now, and legitimate, of course they are legitimate because people make mistakes, and ODM may have made certain mistakes. For example, when it came to the sharing of the political parties, funds, how the process was handled, so that the other fellas felt, they were not operating in good faith. I think that is something that really needs to be addressed. But what is more important that I was saying is that if you look at the basis of these NASA principles, if you look at Mudavadi's base, as well as Kalonzo Musyoka's base, and you ask the base, forget about the principles, whom would you go for? Would you go for the deputy president, or would you go for the former prime minister? I'm sure their bases would very easily gravitate around the former prime minister.
All right.
Yes.
Professor Wajakoya, the former vice president and the ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi said he's engaged in his personal business, so won't make it. So is Moses Wetangula. Kalonzo Musyoka, I think, is in Juba. He's monitoring, of course, the implementation of a peace process. Is it significant that these three who have been part and parcel of a NASA coalition, the defunct NASA coalition, is it significant that they will not be in Kasarani?
Really, Raila doesn't need them. I also don't need them. They have been there for a very long time. And you can also see from their mode of operation. When Mudavadi was campaigning, he only goes for the roadside shows or going to sign us a book in a governor's office in Nyeri or Nyandarua or Laikipia. That is not campaigning. And that's why they are giving Ruto a leverage to campaign. Real campaign needs real men campaigning to real people. So when it comes to them now wearing suits and driving around and going to State House to take a picture with the president, will that translate into votes? Raila does not need them.
Raila doesn't need them. But we could also see betrayal in the city today, Wakili Kena Monde, because these three principles deliberately, because they appear to say they have personal business, but it appears like a deliberate skip of the Azimio la Umoja convention. But we have seen time and time again the Baringo Senate appearing to pull towards Raila Odinga. If he shows up today in Kasarani, wouldn't that be the beginning of the end of the One Kenya Alliance?
Yeah, you see, one thing I know about the One Kenya Alliance is that in the end of the day, they will gravitate around one of the major presidential aspirants. And this will come especially because of the pressure that they will get from the ground. Yeah, the way this country ordinarily operates, notwithstanding the fact that we have a constitution that asks a dispersal of power and the county's devolution, but there's a sense in which people still believe that central government is everything. That is the notion down there. So that heading towards 2022, January, February, thereabouts, I expect a lot of pressure to come from the base of these particular politicians and insisting that they have to be in either of the the main divides that will be most likely to win the presidential race. But of course I expect Gideon to be at the function today, and of course for good reason, given the history with his friend, the president, those family affiliations. Gideon I expect to be at the function.
All right, and we'll see whether Gideon Moi will make it to Kasarani today, and we'll continue with that analysis, particularly on the One Kenya Alliance and what it portends for them, the meeting today. But for now, I want us to head straight to Mombasa. Like I told you, we're live from several locations. We're live in Kisumu, we're live in Mombasa, we're live in Kasarani, both in and out, and we're live in studio now. Thomas Madiga joins us from Mombasa. Thomas, if you could kindly update us on the mood in Mombasa ahead of this declaration.
Well, good morning to you, Jacob Kioria at Broadcasting House in Nairobi. We are live from Mombasa County. I'm just in the streets of Mombasa, just behind me the usual logo which tells that we're in Mombasa, the Elephant Tusk. And as it is today is the D-Day for the ODM party, as the presidential hopeful Raila Amolo Odinga will be launching his presidential bid during the Azimio la Umoja convention in Kasarani. And in Mombasa it is all systems go. And about yesterday we had been talking to grassroots leaders here in Mombasa, and they say they are all prepared to join Raila Amolo Odinga in the Azimio la Umoja convention in Nairobi. And as yesterday several buses had left Mombasa to Nairobi, and we had leaders even from the grassroots level, those aspiring for the MCA, several youths and people to Nairobi, sponsoring them to Nairobi so that they'll be joining the convention, of which 60,000 people are expected to be attending the Azimio la Umoja convention. Of course, to ODM people, it is a big day to them, of course, as they expect Raila Odinga to launch his presidential bid for the next year. They're expecting good things, of course, from the Azimio la Umoja convention, of which they want their interest to be taken economic.
Siku leo itakuwa ni siku katika mwaka mpya.
Sijaona hotuba yako, lakini natazamia kwamba itakuwa ni ya kuwarai wafuasi wako zaidi, lakini pia nafikiri utakuwa unalenga kuwazungumzia wale ambao ni wapinzani wako, kuwavutia na wao waweze kujiunga nayo.
Tunaongea na Wakenya, sio watu wafuasi wa Raila Odinga peke yake. Wale hata wapinzani wetu ni Wakenya. Kwa hivyo ile kitu tunasema, tunaongea juu ya umoja wa Kenya. Wakenya waje pamoja, waache kubaguana kwa misingi ya kikabila, misingi ya kidini, misingi ya kijinsia, au misingi ya kiumri, ili tuweze kujenga. Leo ni siku ya Wakenya, si siku ya Raila Odinga au jamii yake au chama chake. Hapana, hii ni siku ya sisi zote Wakenya tunakuja pamoja. Ndio.
Asante sana Mama Aida, na kuona pia na wewe unapongeza sana. Kwa kifupi tu maana najua una fursa nzuri kubwa sana katika hafla ya leo ambayo ni kumwasilisha ama kumwakilisha mmeo Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga, kumpeleka kwa wananchi. Umejipanga kinamna gani?
Leo ni siku muhimu sana kwa maisha yetu na kwa maisha ya Wakenya wote pamoja. Ni siku nyingine tena ambaye anajitolea kufanyia kazi wa Kenya, na leo nitaangalia Wakenya wakiamua, na mimi tuko tayari, mimi pamoja na familia yangu yote tuko tayari kuwakilisha kwa wananchi.
Asante sana. Asante sana.
Sawa, tusikilia. Nisikie kidogo kama. Kwa vizuri. Kwa vizuri. Nisikie kamera, nisikie. Hapa, kana. Hata kwa hiyo mtaka. Tunageuka na angalia huko. Ndio. Ngoja kidogo. Jipange haraka. Jipange haraka.
Weke mguu wako mbele.
Jipange haraka.
Jipange haraka mwana.
Weka mguu pale pale.
Ndio nataka. Ngoja kidogo.
Wako ni sawa? Sawa. Manu, una jacket hapo nyuma usiondole.
Sawa. Hello. Hapa niko sawa. Tulia kabisa.
Haiko stable.
Ulieka. Haiko stable.
You're fine.
Wala. Haya. Sasa hapa nisaidie. Nyuma kuna nini? Nyuma kuna
Manu.
Uko sawa Morris? Uko sawa? Mimi niko sawa. Umeenda tu vizuri, sawa time tu. Signal hii inawaka.
Remote control.
Okay, hebu kaza ile remote control leo kama kuna signal. Shika. Mauritius, signal iko?
Signal.
Okay, sawa. Hello. Haya, sawa.
Utatumia hapa na hapa.
Haya. Nitamfanyia uko sawa? Uko sawa. Haya. Uko sawa? Hapa. Radio yangu imeanguka.
Wapi?
Hapa. Hapa chini. Sawa. Kuwa stable. Usiende mbio sana. Kapsa anachukua sasa. Endelea.
Endelea. Amepata serious study. Leo watajua wajui.
Leo sasa haya uko
anapiga study pia.
Namaze. Nikamfanyia uko live hapa.
Remote control. Nilikuwa na feed.
Okay.
Brady. Sawa, weka picha.
Under remote control. अभी close. अभी SCT पे.
Odinga the fifth, baba likuja na handshake, vijana tukasare rampage, peace ikakuwa tukaifollow sana kushinda fanpage. ni kesho.
Mabango ya aspirants, kama una masikio yaweke chini, because everything after today tunataka kuanza sherehe.
bana. Nini? Tumia akili idiot. Una hiyo nyingine. Haya, sawa basi kata na ingine basi kutoka
Odinga the fifth, baba likuja na handshake, vijana tukasare rampage, peace ikakuwa tukaifollow sana kushinda fanpage.
Asante kwa video hiyo.
Niombe wale mko kwa hiyo jukwaa ya wasanii muondoke mara moja. Kama wewe sio msanii, toka kwa hiyo jukwaa ya wasanii please. Niombe kutambua uwepo wa seneta wa Narok Ledama Unakinwe. Thank you for joining us. Gavana Godana kutoka Tanzania. Deputy Governor Dr. Kumbe ambaye ni naibu wa gavana Matuzi na Siaya. Tuko naye vile vile Aina Kenga pamoja na viongozi wengine mbalimbali akiwemo Mheshimiwa Kane Bamisi kutoka Saboti ambaye alimkaribisha baba vilivyo juzi kule Kitale. Niombe Sheikh Juma Ngao, Bishop Washington Ongonyongede na Bishop Mosoti kujiongee karibu. Vile vile ningeomba msanii Emmanuel Musindi uwe tayari. Khadija, naomba uniletee kikosi hicho ambayo wanajulikana kwa miondoko yao almaarufu ngumi ni ni Mbekse. Bogi! Bogi! Ngoja, hawa watu wako tayari, wacha wasanii wataperform siku nyingine. Uko tayari? Bogi! Bogi!
DJ Carter.
Madudu, awadudu, happy bada wadari. Hey, Ochiano, Ogigende, Siga Ogigende.
Uko sawa Maurice? Uko sawa wewe? Mimi niko sawa. Umeenda tu vizuri, sawa time tu. Signal hii inawaka.
Remote control.
Okay, hebu kaza ile remote control wewe kama kuna signal. Shika.
Mauritius,
signal iko?
Signal.
Okay, sawa. Hello. Haya, sawa.
Utakuweza hapa neta.
Haya. Nitanifanyia uko sawa? Uko sawa. Haya. Uko sawa? Hapa. Radio yangu imeanguka.
Wapi?
Hapa. Hapa chini. Sawa. Kuwa stable. Usiende mbio sana. Kapsa anachukua sasa. Endelea.
Amepata serious study. Leo watajua wajui.
Leo sasa uko
anapiga study pia.
Namaze. Nikonfanyia uko live hapa.
Remote control. Niliona na feed.
Okay.
wakili mrembo, ana pesa na hana maringo. Pigie makofi. Mheshimiwa Abdul Swamad Sharif, asante sana, asante sana. Mzee Willis Todi, Luo Council of Elders, asante sana. Jimmy Angwenyi ambaye ni deputy leader of government business. Nafikiri Mheshimiwa Gladys Wanga, asante sana. Mheshimiwa Yusuf kutoka Kapunji, huyu ndio mbunge wangu, asante sana. Mheshimiwa Kasipul, uko wapi? Deputy Governor Nyamira County, simama tafadhali bwana Diji uonekane. Tuko na Jaoko Oburu ambaye ni mwana wake Daktari Oburu Oginga. Elijah Oburu, tafadhali. Timothy Bosire, tafadhali. Asante sana. Asante sana. Tuko na Chairman Wodwol, Dr. James Nyikal, who is an expert pediatrician. Asante sana. Mheshimiwa Aduma Owor, mjumbe wa Nyakach, asante. Na niombe tupate burudani inayofuata wakati Emmanuel Musindi unajitayarisha, kisha tutaendelea na ratiba. Na kwa njia ya kipekee nitambue Mheshimiwa Florence Mutwa, Women Rep Busia County. Asante kwa ukakamavu wako. Khadija, burudani inayofuata. Shikilia kidogo Wakwito. Mbaito Mwaseo. Mwaseo inge. Naomba hivi maafisa wa usalama, ile entrance ya wasanii ifungwe. Tuelekee juu, tuko na nafasi ya kutosha pale juu. Tafadhalini sana, ninawaomba. Hiyo gate ifungwe ili watu waweze kwenda juu. Iko nafasi ya kutosha, iko soda ya kutosha, iko wifi ya kutosha. Na ukiketi pale juu unaondolewa kwa fuliza mara moja. Tuendelee.
DJ.
Continue, niangalie. Under remote control. Abu close. Abu, CDP.
Odinga the fifth, baba likuja na handshake, vijana tukasare rampage, peace ikakuwa tukaifollow sana kushinda fanpage.
Mpigie makofi ya kipekee Mheshimiwa David Morathe. Makofi tafadhali. Na karibu sana. Karibu sana. Karibu sana. Mheshimiwa Dennis Wawero, hebu simama uonekane. Huyu ndio alikuwa mwenyekiti wa BBI hapa mjini na sana chairman. Niombe kutambua uwepo wake Mheshimiwa Wangare Mwaneki, mbunge wa Kigumo, Murang'a County. Kama unavyoona hata Murang'a iko locked. Na niombe tuendelee kujaza sehemu ile ili tumruhusu mgeni wa uwanjani. Afisa wa usalama, naomba tusaidiane sana. Na niombe niletewe wasanii wanaofuata ili tuende kwa awamu inayofuata. Khadija.
Hard boy, please. Next on stage, hard boy.
Wapi hapo?
Wakati anajiandaa, shikilia kidogo. Maafisa wa usalama pamoja na stewards wetu, tumeelewana watu wanaondoka katikati ya uwanja ili tumruhusu mgeni wa heshima kuingia. wale wote wameketi ni wa Kenya na ni wazalendo na wana haki ya kukua hapa. Kwa sababu ya watu wanaotaka kumkosea heshima mgeni wetu wa heshima. Hilo agizo paka litekelezwe. Niombe maafisa tusaidiane ili mamilioni ya watu duniani wanaomtarajia Raila Odinga waweze kumuona, kwa sababu bila kutoka hapa. Tafadhali maafisa, tuanze shughuli hiyo. Tuanze na kuondoa upande huo moja kwa moja mpaka kule. Wananchi kwa kuanza kutoka. Ni kuhakikishie hautaharibu mkutano wa Raila Odinga. Haijaanza jana na itafanyika leo. Nataka nikuambie na hawa waondolewe mara moja. Waondolewe mara moja hawa. Huu ni mkutano wa baba na hakuna mtu atacheza na mkutano wa baba. Hauna hiyo idhini na itafanyika. Itasonga. Ninaomba asante wale mumeondoka, na wakiondoka maafisa tufunge hapo kabisa. Thank you security officers for that. Sisi wote ni jamii moja, tusikosane na tusizozane tafadhalini. Nyinyi ni watoto wetu na tunawapenda, lakini leo mpaka baba apewe heshima yake, mpaka baba apewe heshima anayostahili. Dunia nzima there is only one Raila Amolo Odinga. Sio wawili, ni mmoja. Hata fananishwa na mwingine. Tunaomba kwa upole na kwa unyenyekevu agizo hilo ielekezwe na itekelezwe. Asanteni wananchi wapendwa kwa kufanya kazi hiyo. Na hii bango hiyo iondolewe mara moja. Tafadhali usilete michezo ya aspirants hapa. Usilete michezo. Tuende kwa upole wananchi wapendwa, kwa upole. Kwa upole. Salia Alvin ngoja. Kwa upole. Asante. Asante. Wananchi wameelewa na ni wananchi wazuri. Asante sana. Tunaendelea kuondoka polepole. Tunaendelea kuondoka polepole. Asante sana kwa kazi hiyo ya kuondoa watu uwanjani. Na maafisa wengine mliokuwa na suti na reflectors za security, naomba msaidie kusindikiza wananchi. Naomba polepole tu, asante. Na tuendelee, turudi kwa viti zetu. Asante sana wananchi kwa kutii. Na wale wachache wamebaki waendelee vile vile mpaka kila mtu aondoke hapo. Stewards wetu wale muna reflector jacket za orange, muingie kwa uwanja musaidiane na gari. Orange na mulio suti, ingie tusaidie kuwaelekeza. Tafadhali sana, tafadhali sana, tusaidiane kazi hiyo. Sisi sote tusaidiane kazi hiyo, na inaendelea kufanyika vizuri. Tuende mpaka mwisho ya gate 10 na gate 9. Tuende moja kwa moja. Tafadhali sana. Stewards tusaidiane. Tusaidiane sana. hatuwezi kuendelea kabla hiyo ifanyike. Asante, naona wananchi wameanza kupanda huko juu. Hiyo ni nzuri sana. Kuna umati umesalia hapa, niombe tusaidiane waweze kuelekezwa vilivyo. Vikosi vyetu vya security mulio hapa, tusaidiane. Tusaidiane tafadhali. Asante Abuka, tusaidiane pale tafadhali. Huo upande mwingine mpaka uwanja ubaki wazi. Mpaka uwanja ubaki wazi. Yule amesimama na bendera hiyo aondoke hapo mara moja. Aondoke mpaka kule juu. Naelekezwe. Wananchi tuelekee mpaka gate 9 na 10 kule mwisho. Stewards tusaidiane kazi hiyo. Stewards tumevaa reflector jackets, tusaidiane kazi hiyo. Tuende mpaka kule mwisho. Kuna mamilioni ya watu duniani wanatutizama hivi sasa, na wangependa ratiba iendelee. Kwa hivyo nakuomba kwa heshima na taadhima kuu, ari yako ya ufuasi isiharibie wengine. Ataki sukuma watu paka huko mwisho. Wewe ni kiongozi, ataki sukuma watu paka mwisho bila kutumia mabavu. Tuelekee mpaka mwisho, tuondoke nyuma ya hiyo jukwaa ya wasanii. Tafadhali maaskari, tuhakikishe hiyo. Tuelekeze watu mpaka mwisho kule, na wale wameketi kwa uwanja waondoke. Tafadhali, kama mtu hawezi tembea, leta ambulance mbebe. Tafadhali sana. Lazima agizo hiyo itekelezwe. Lazima itekelezwe. Tuelekee mpaka gate 9 mwisho, na gate 19 isalie imefungwa. Wananchi wapendwa, tunaendelea kushukuru kwa kuwa watulivu na kuwa watu ambao mmejitolea tangu saa 10:30 asubuhi siku ya leo. Kwa hivyo hawa wachache na wao vile vile wafuate maagizo. Maafisa wa usalama waende mpaka mwisho. Waende mpaka mwisho, waketi kwa viti. Hakuna ruhusa kukaa uwanjani. Naomba job commander na timu yako, tafadhali, na nyinyi wote mmevaa reflector jackets, mumesimama hapa, usichunge chuma, nenda ufanye kazi hiyo tafadhali. Nyinyi mulio hapa, tusaidiane. Tusaidiane kazi hiyo. Kila mtu paka aende aketi. Asanteni sana kwa kuwa watiifu na kukubali maagizo hayo. Kabla tuendelee, Juma, tafadhali ile umati, tuma kikosi hapo msaidiane ikisonga. Tafadhali tuendelee kusonga. Tumefunga ratiba sasa, na tunawapenda sana, sio madharau, lakini ni lazima, tena kwa heshima kuu na taadhima kuu. Tuendelee kusonga. Na niombe wakati hiyo inaendelea, Khadija,
Ochia dancers, Kochia dancers please. Karibuni.
Wapi makofi ya Kochia kutoka Homabay? Wapi makofi yao? Ona sasa maneno, tunyamaze tuone, twende.
Kochia dancers.
Kochia dancers, mutasalia kidogo. Asante Kochia, kwa sababu muko na nafasi murua wakati mgeni wa heshima yuko. Naomba mutulie kwanza. Nyakenywa muwe standby, Taarab na West Pokot Choir. Na naomba nitambue watu wawili kwa njia ya kipekee. Wa kwanza ni Governor Alex Tolgos, Governor wa Elgeyo Marakwet County. Niombe usimame gavana uonekane tafadhali. Alex Tolgos, thank you. Niombe vile vile gavana ambaye ni mcheshi, anajulikana kwa matamshi ya kijana fupi round, Gavana wa West Pokot County, Professor John Lonyanga Buo. Naomba usimame uonekane professor. Asante, asante professor. Gavana Granton Samboja kutoka gatuzi ya Taita Taveta. Granton Samboja, karibu sana. Nitambue wajumbe wa Nairobi, Mheshimiwa Beatrice Kwamboka, Mheshimiwa Aladwa George, Mheshimiwa Imran Okoth, Mheshimiwa Oluoch Anthony, Mheshimiwa Kajwang TJ, pamoja na Mheshimiwa Babu Owino, Mheshimiwa Timu Wanyonyi, vile vile mwanaharakati wa kina mama Agnes Kagore vile vile yuko hapa, pamoja na viongozi wengine mbalimbali. Naomba Emmanuel Musindi uwe standby. Wale muko kwa uwanja, keti chini sasa. Iko nafasi ya kuketi. Keti chini. Keti chini ili wale wako nyuma waone. Na usijaribu kusonga mbele, ili tupatie kila mtu nafasi. Naomba Kochia dancers mutateremka kwa jukwaa kidogo. Chuka dancers mutakuwa standby. Kochia muteremuke kidogo. West Pokot Choir mkuwe standby. West Pokot Choir standby. Na niombe Chuka Dramas mchukue jukwaa sasa. Chuka Dramas waingie jukwaa. Emmanuel Musindi, please kuwa standby. Chuka Dramas, usukani ni wenyu. Asante sana Chuka Dramas. Emmanuel Musindi, naomba uchukue jukwaa sasa. Chuka Dramas. Chuka Dramas, thank you. Emmanuel Musindi, naomba uchukue jukwaa sasa, na Khadija utakuwa standby kutuletea wasanii ambao watatutumbuiza tutakapowasili hapa. Niombe mfawili mwenza Oluoch aje jukwaani kwa jukumu ambazo zinasalia, na niombe timu ya Boys vipaza sauti zote zilizo kwa jukwaa ziwe on and kept open kutoka sasa. Yeze. Check. Kuwa standby Emmanuel Musindi. Na wakati huo nitambue uwepo wake Mheshimiwa Engineer Joseph Nduati Ngugi, mjumbe wa Gatanga. Niombe jukwaa sasa, kila mtu apate kuketi. Kwa jukwaa kila mtu apate kuketi. Kwa jukwaa kila mtu apate kuketi sasa. Niombe kutambua uwepo wake kinara wa chama cha KANU, Senator Gideon Moi. Naomba mumkaribishe Gideon Moi kwa makofi mazuri, pamoja na ujumbe aliotembea nao. Naomba Emmanuel Musindi. Na sasa sote wananchi wapendwa, wale tumeketi tupate kusimama. Wale ambao tumeketi kule kwa jukwaa tupate kusimama, na wale mumesimama kwa jukwaa tafadhali Millicent, kila mtu aliyesimama hapo, Kamau na wengine, tupeane nafasi. Sasa tupeane nafasi wale tumesimama kwa jukwaa. Asante Olenchoe, nimekuona, karibu. Tafadhali kwa jukwaa tusalie na utulivu. Kwa jukwaa tusalie na utulivu. Tusalie na utulivu kwa jukwaa. Niombe protocol officers wote walio jukwaani wapate kuketi. Waweze kupatiwa nafasi ya kuketi. Niombe kwenye jukwaa tusalie tumeketi. Harriet, tafadhali kila mtu aliye hapo aketi, na uniletea hao wageni wa nje.
Ogopa. Ile mzee anashuka. Dirisha iko wazi.
Dirisha iko wazi ndio kufika. Sasa hivi wala anashuka.
Sasa mwambie mpigie.
Ndio nimekalia ile debe.
Na niombe kutambua uwepo wa Waziri Peter Munya.
Wakaida hapo. Mama ile alikuwa shika hapa. Yule ameshika. Yeye.
inaitwa the fifth. Nikisema baba unasema the fifth, ukiweka bango juu. Baba, baba, baba. Kwa heshima hiyo niombe unikubalie Your Excellency Engineer Dr. Raila Odinga, niombe sote tusimame wima kwa heshima ya taifa ya Kenya, na ukiwa na kofia isiyo rasmi nikuombe uweze kuinua tupate wimbo wa taifa utakaofuatiwa na wimbo ya Jumuiya ya Afrika Mashariki, ikiwa ni stanza moja moja, wimbo wa taifa. Tunaingia kipindi cha maombi, niliomba watakao kuelekeza kwamba tupate chochote na tusalie watulivu, huku nimemkaribisha Shehe Odinga atakayepatiwa na kiongozi wa kongamano la maaskofu Daktari Washington Odinga, Askofu Korema, Askofu Lesoti kwa maombi ya kule. Shehe Odinga, nikuombe kwa kupata sauti mbadala utuongoze kwa maombi ya Kiislamu.